Hello, everyone. Welcome to Chasing a Murderer. Today, I want to start off by saying Merry Christmas and Happy Holidays. We have the new year approaching, and I'm hoping that you guys have the most prosperous, most healthy New Year's of all. As you know, I've been working very hard on this series, Life Beyond the Grave, attached to the Lori Vallow case, and today we are doing part 60. Can you believe it? And just recently, I was able to catch a few, bits and pieces of some series that have come out. And it just seems that my research is very contradicting compared to a lot of those. And one thing that I think we're most contradictive about is Joe Ryan and the people that surrounded him. I am not going to take a man that is in his grave and paint him as a criminal, especially without the evidence. And we have no proof that any of these accusations against Joe Ryan was ever proven in a court of law. In Lori's world, you can paint somebody as a victim or an attacker, and you can attack him, abuse him, and destroy his world simply because you claim that he's something, even if anyone else around that person don't agree. And this is something her children were trained to do as well, and we'll talk more on this later. It's something that comes from her family. Either you're on their side or you can have nothing to do with them. There's no middle. In most cases, if you're in Lori Vallow's life, you're either going to choose her side and go with whatever she says, or you're no longer allowed to be part of her life. And Lori Vallow's mother, which Janice Cox, which I like, I'm not saying this to down her, but she was the same way, especially when this case broke and people were saying, thought Alex Cox might have part to do with this. Well, if you thought that, you were not allowed to come to his funeral. Right now, we're in the year of 2016 of this case. And here, you're going to start getting more answers, I believe, as to why things got as far as they did and why. Remember, Chad and Lori both had an interest of being part of the leadership of the LDS Church, but they could only go so far. This must have been very disappointing to people who are very driven into getting their way. And at that point, what what are they thinking? When they know that there's no way that they can climb any higher, they can't reach the top of the ladder. In my opinion, and of course you can draw your own opinion and your own ideas off of what I share here, I found that Chad Daybell especially started creating his own world, his own rules. And he was not alone. There was hundreds of other people that were hanging out at the AVAL who had the same ideas, the same intentions, and they had their needs to be on top. We are learning that Chad Daybell is very protective over Julie Rowe, and Julie Rowe has gotten into this, very deep into this energy work. But the more that they mention that they have these visions of destruction or can predict the future, the more the church is stepping up. People like Eric Hawkins, who respond and say that we urge church members to be cautious about participating in any groups that promise, in exchange for money, for healing, or claims to have special methods for accessing healing powers outside of the properly ordained priesthood holders. But this isn't the first time that the church has had to address this. In fact, they've had to deal with it where they've had Elder Ballard basically repeated the same thing. He had to address something similar, and he said, "Brothers and sisters, be wise and aware that such practices may be emotionally appealing, but may ultimately prove to be spiritually and physically harmful." Now, these warnings are well out there, and people who are attached to the LDS, including the AVAL people, they understand these things. They're hearing these things, but They're going in one ear and out the other. And in this time, Chad Daybell's blog, well, he continues to write in it and he's sharing more of his personal feelings. And one of the things I want to share with you is where he talks about his wife, Tammy Daybell. She was 8 months pregnant with her fourth child, sorry guys, Leah. It's one of the last that I can find post, really, where he seems to have a lot of concern about his wife. His wife, Tammy, ended up in the hospital because she felt something deep inside of her pop. And as he says he was talking to his wife, Tammy suddenly started bleeding very heavily, and it quickly turned into a frantic situation. Chad says it's at that point that he gives her a priesthood blessing. Then Tammy was rushed into the operating room. He said he and Phyllis, well, they got out of the way and waited anxiously. He says at that point, well, a few moments later, he sneaks down the hall and peers through the room's small window, and all he could see was the top of his wife's head. Surrounding her were several nurses and a doctor. He says he was very scared, but he also knew that it wasn't her time to die. Both Tammy and the child Leah survive, but afterwards, the doctor tells him that, there's no more getting pregnant. And his response to this was, you could tell he wanted to argue with the doctor because he had visions that they would have more children. And this is where you can understand that his visions were more important than his wife's life, because at that time he says he does not press the issue, but Tammy hadn't forgot about the vision either. And though the doctor had advised that she not get pregnant again, he and his wife say that the vision, they knew that they could not listen to the doctor, and they didn't, because she was pregnant in 1999. And by the year 2000, Mark was born. And he explains, here we are many years later. Those babies, they're growing up. And he's seeing his vision that was implanted in his mind, and that it was a little eerie to see the kids become the people he had seen in that vision. Several of his kids have gone on their mission, a few return, and at the very beginning of 2015, we learned that Daybell describes his marriage as being, well, a happy marriage. But now he's telling Julie Rowe, who he's very close with, that he's seeing visions that his wife, Tammy, well, she's going to die. Chad Daybell continues to, share with people he's a prophet. And he's able to use these core beliefs of the LDS to hide the radical beliefs. We must not forget that the LDS they believe in being blessed and visions and having prophecies. But these things are very important to you and usually kept to yourself. Chad Daybell's interest in the Church of the Firstborn, well, that's growing. And Chad has also started playing with the fact that he's had several lives besides the one he's living today, which he would call premortal life or lives, kind of like reincarnation. And he's going to use very high officials or prophets of the past to validate how important he is to the LDS, to the religion, and to the approaching apocalypse and the second coming of Jesus Christ. He's playing with the idea that there's going to be a certain area close to where he's living, in fact, that will be the gathering place, a sanction of safety and a growing community who all have a certain or a common goal, and that was to prepare for the second coming. Most of his visions, well, they're attached to Utah and Idaho. His interest in cemeteries, ghosts, and you got to remember that his and Tammy's relationship, well, this was all, well, it was building around death at the very beginning. Chad's starting to lose interest in that sort of thing and moving towards something a little bit more spectacular. And I believe, based off of my opinion, guys, that he sees himself sitting on a throne. And once he does that, there's no stopping him. I need to mention this. So I've seen bits and pieces of the series that are being done on this case, one of them being Sins of Our Mother. And the thing is, I'm finding that many of their, well, what they're sharing is a bit contradictory to what I'm saying. But you have to remember, you have to, in order to get interviews, well, you have to make them happy to a certain extent. That's what I believe. And I don't have to do interviews. Now remember, Lori Vallow was, well, crazy obsessed with wanting to get rid of Joseph Ryan. And Colby, well, he's on this series saying that his mother did talk about wanting to, for Joe to be dead all the time. Quite different from when we started talking about the story at the beginning. Not for me, anyways, but most other people. I believe this, knowing what you know about Lori in the past is very, very important for you to understand who she is in the future. Now, Colby says that Lori, his mother, talked about Joe, killing Joe all the time, okay, that she wanted him dead, not killing him, but she wanted him dead. Keywords, all the time. This was her obsession. Colby told her that, Joseph did these bad things to him. And I looked into it, and based off of my research anyways, Lori tried to get a lot of people to lie about Joseph Ryan. We know that she was trying to get people to lie. And it seems that she's even gotten the kids to believe these lies. Joseph Ryan's sister, Annie Cushion, was part of these lies too. Did Annie Cushion realize that she was part of the lie? Well, we don't know. We do know, however, what she shares with us, and the fact that she says that she talked to Lori, and her demeanor of the story changes multiple times. That, ask Lori if she had ever been abused, and Lori tells her yes by her brother. But here's the thing, Annie Cushion never really saw any abuse, not to the extent that we're hearing from Lori and her kids. We learned that Lori convinces Annie to go to court and testify against her own brother. And we learn that the courts looked into these accusations and found nothing to support Joe's being abusive. Instead, we find evidence that the courts were more worried about Lori and her being caught in lies, not Joseph Ryan. So you have to take things with a grain of salt when you hear witnesses speak on a subject. We're learning that Lori is very obsessed with the thoughts of wishing Joseph Ryan dead. But during this time, while she's heading back to Arizona, back to the States from Hawaii, where her family's kind of a mess. Her teenage children are giving her a hard time. JJ's growing up, and they're finding out, he's requiring a lot more than they expected. There's just a lot going on for Lori during this time. She turns to God, and she tells us later on in an interview that she goes to her bishop and tells him, I need to get a temple recommend, or she's going to murder someone. And she's starting to read more and more of Chad Daybell's books. She's reading Julie Rowe's books. And now her obsession of Joe is starting to weaken a bit as it grows a different direction. Now, you'll hear me mention the name Michael and Nancy James. They are over preparing the people in the future. They are with a multimedia company, which is attached to the LDS. At least they tried to attach it to that. And around this time, this multimedia company, they're supporting several end day groups, even during this time, webinars, conferences, and even doing mini shows based on the LDS faith and end days. So this is going on before Lori and Chad. So around 2015 to 2018, preparing the people is, well, they're in their infancy. One of their main clients, guys, is the Isaiah Institute, which we talked about a little bit. And these are people that are researching the book of Isaiah. They're looking for these secret messages about when the end days are going to be here and trying to find out how it's attached to their faith. Who are supporters of this Isaiah Institute? We have Chad Daybell, Melanie Gibb, a few others. They're starting to follow these new ideas because the Isaiah Institute's been around, I think, since I think the 1990s even. On the Isaiah Institute's website, they have things called dream visions and near-death experiences compared to the prophecy of Isaiah's series. As the most published scholar on the book of Isaiah in the world, forgive me if I butcher this name, Dr. Abraham Galidi, shares his nearly 40 years of research on Isaiah, comparing the current documented dreams, visions, and near-death experiences, such as, you're going to know this book, Visions of Glory, with the end time predictions of Isaiah. While a cleansing is imminent, there exists hope for the glorious millennial age. Many people today are having visionary experiences that suggest Isaiah's prophecies are nearing fulfillment. Dr. Galidi correlates these with events now happening in the world. This lecture series covers many things analyzed in the books that appear on IsaiahExplained.com, also on IsaiahInstitute.com. So here you can see where Chad and people like Julie, they can go to and get confirmation of the very same things that they're pushing. And we know it's around this same time that Lori Vallow is certain end days are coming and that she's targeting Chad Daybell for an unknown reason at this time. We can speculate as to why, but we really have no certain reason. And it's the year 2016 that this spark that is thrown into an open brush, well, it would take at least one more year before we finally see signs of a fire that started from that spark. So here you have the Mormon church. Well, they're having to deal with a lot of people now that are teaching these ideas. And it will continue to lead more and more people outside of the true faith. You have several doctors of the Mormon faith creating these websites, pushing people to believe more and more in their visions. And they are finding doctrines, they're finding verses to back up their ideas. So, as for an example, God did utilize visions in the Old Testament, and this is in Genesis 46:2. In Corinthians 12:1 through 4, the prophet Joel even speaks of expanding frequency of visions in relation to the day of the Lord. The Isaiah Institute is putting out tons of material. They have end time lecture series. And for a fee, you can buy these series or you can go and attend the series and see them live. Just learn more about the end day messages of Isaiah or learn more about the Lord's calendar and holy days. Now, I need you guys to understand bits and pieces of this before we move forward in our timeline. You got to understand that a lot of these messages, well, they're coming from Jewish holidays. And they're actually having many of their seminars let's say, for example, October 2nd of 2014 from 7 to 9 p.m. And then they will continue weekly through November 20th of 2014. They wrote that this is a great way to finish up the 10 days of all, which, well, goes with the Day of Atonement or Yom Kippur of October 3rd of 2014. According to the website, this mission is to prepare the people on earth for the second coming of Jesus Christ. And now you can see that perhaps what Chad and Lori were doing, they were just an extension of a free, well, something like the Isaiah Institute. I'm not here to bash the Isaiah Institute, but I do want to know, the original sources of where these people are getting their ideas. What are their interests? According to other people, they're saying that it doesn't appear to be any sort of formal organization attached to these teachings or any clear doctrine, for that matter, attached to these unconventional groups of the Latter-day Saints. And there are several people that are interviewed, and their experiences are different. According to East Idaho News, none of the members of these groups will agree on everything. But East Idaho News later shared an interview with a girl that went by the name of Jessica that knew some of these people within the circle of people. One of them posing to be a healer, saying that he would heal her through prayer, through God, of her blood sugar issues, her thyroid issues. And this guy was her boss. She said her boss's gifts seemed to extend into the digital realm as well. She says while she was there working one day that they were having computer problems and that this guy invoked his spiritual power to repair the broken computer server. If they had some kind of broken interference, well, they would blame it on a spiritual interference. And this lady says that she wasn't one to really judge, what he was doing or if he was capable of doing so. She says she was working there because she said God wanted her to. She says also that she knows that the Latter-day Saints, well, they do teach them to prepare to an extent for emergencies. She says it's later on that she will get tickets from this very same guy to go to a Preparing the People conference. Well, she will learn a different level of preparing for emergency situations. And if I can remember, we will continue what she had to say to the East Idaho News Group. Nate Eaton. Sorry, guys. Getting lost in my thoughts. According to an interview later, it's around this time that Lori Vallow is reaching out to Julie Rowe through means of email. And when she does reach out to Julie Rowe and tells her that she is a true servant, and at this time in Lori's life, she doesn't understand email, doesn't know much about the computer, so she has to read a book to learn how to email. Very important to understand that Lori Vallow at this point is not familiar with computers, but she's trying to learn how to use them because everybody she wants to talk to or listen to, well, they're all on the computer. And according to a post by Eric Smith, it's also around this time that Julie Rowe she has 22 speaking events between the years 2014 and 2015. This post was made reaching out to people that went to these speaking events, asking for people to share their experiences or, special anything that might have happened during these events. This was posted December 31st, 2016 at 12:41 a.m. by Eric Smith. Lori's messages from God at this time in her life, well, they're growing stronger and stronger every day. In fact, one of the reasons she moved to Hawaii was she seen a written message to her telling her she needed to move to Hawaii. Well, let's put it a little less dramatic. She moved to Hawaii because she had a piece of paper with Hawaii written on it a few times. And this is her message from God. These messages, well, they're coming more often. God had told her that she would be on the Wheel of Fortune, and she was. God mentioned for her to move to Hawaii, and so she did. But we never find out why she moves back to Arizona. There's a lot of clues and a lot of what Lori says to people. And Joe Ryan must have caught on to something, because Lori was actually, there was times she was comparing a lot of what she was going through with Joseph Ryan to Nephi. Let's go over one of the things that Lori said in front of her little group of LDS people that she was talking to, and it's in the future here. She says, quote, "He told everybody that I was this lazy, crazy Mormon." She's referring to Joe Ryan. "And got up in court and said all these horrible things about me, and turned it around to where the judges believed him instead of me." So here you can see where she's admitting that the courts believed that Lori was lying. She was the one manipulating. She was the abuser, not Joseph Ryan. She shared even more. She said, quote, "I went through a lot of years of this kind of hard stuff, and I was going to murder him. I was going to kill him, like the scriptures say." Let's pause a minute. And then she's going to refer to Nephi, like Nephi killed, just to stop the pain, to stop him from coming after me, and to stop him from coming after my children, end quote. Let's analyze this because it's very important. And there's only one thing that I've been able to investigate about Nephi. And I think Nephi plays an important part in Lori's thoughts, especially with Tylee Ryan. In the scriptures, Nephi he's wanting to get a hold of the golden plates. But his nemesis, well, he's making it very difficult for him to do this. It says that his nemesis takes away his property and keeps the plates away from him. But one day, Nephi decides that he's going to head back to his enemy, and he's going after the plates. Just to cut a long story short, there, he finds his enemy laying in a ditch drunk. And he says God asked him to murder him, that he had put his enemy in his path for that purpose. But Nephi questions it, but ultimately ends up doing it. In fact, he decapitates him. One thing we notice that Lori does admit that she understands that murdering people, well, it's wrong. And this intense desire to want to hurt someone, well, if you can find it in the doctrine or the scriptures, well, then it's okay. This is what she says, quote, "I just felt like I couldn't take it anymore. And I would go through the scriptures and I would find all the things like, if he comes against you once, if he comes against you twice, 3 times, then you can kill him. It says it in the scriptures," end quote. Then Lori continued with, quote, "I was like, there it is. There's my answer. I don't want to do anything wrong." Let's pause there. It's clear that she understands that what she's thinking is wrong. Then she says, "I do not have a murderous heart. I just wanted to stop the bleeding and stop the pain," end quote. So when she's referring to she wants to stop Joe Ryan from coming after her kids, well, I think she's talking about a few things. One, the things that I believe that she's made up against Joe Ryan. And 2, she doesn't want him having visitation with Tylee Ryan. Even more concerning is she's speaking of murder, yet she's saying she doesn't have a murderous heart. But then she looks in the scriptures, and there it is in black and white. that if someone continues to strike at you time and time and time again, then God says it's okay that you take their life. This is very, very important for understanding Lori's mind and how she works. And if you accept exactly who she is, then everything else will fall into place very easily. It now makes sense that when her and Alex attacked Joseph Ryan, what their true intentions are. And Alex Cox is not the lead in this. She is not the innocent woman being protected. She is the woman barking the orders. And if there were a victim, which there isn't, it would be Alex Cox. Alex Cox would do anything to make his sister feel comfortable. And a lot of people when this first broke were wondering whether or not Lori was using religion faithfully, or if it was just a way to distract people from what her true intentions were. And the fact of the matter is, she's using faith 100%, but she's also manipulating it to get what she wants. Her faith is over 100%. But sadly, it's not God's voice that she's getting. It seems to me it's her own voice disguised as God's. She is doing exactly what she wants to do and trying to find every excuse in the book, around the book, above the book, beyond the book, to do what she wants to do. A very persistent person. And sadly, she's knocking on Chad Daybell's door, Julie Rose's door, and it's a matter of who opens up the door the widest. That will, those are the ones that will see the most trouble. And I know that there are people that love Lori and that she had sometimes a good side to her. But sadly, she has a mental illness, in my opinion, that really needed to be addressed a long, long time ago. It's not only that, it's her competitive nature, it's her jealousy, and it's her control. If you watch the Wheel of Fortune little clips that they have out there, she believes that she is the best, and she wants everyone to believe that she is the best. And she wants to be the best at any cost. Anyways, guys, I need to end it here. I hope you guys had a great holiday. I love you all. Thank you so much for your support. If you're new here or haven't done it, make sure that you subscribe. Make sure that you like and comment. Share our videos. And you can also donate at Chasing a Murderer Patreon. You want to see more shows like this? You definitely can help us out by donating there. I feel really bad for the families involved with this case. I feel bad for the children. I feel bad for the mother, the father, the sisters, the brothers. And I want to tell the truth. And I hope, this doesn't hurt people by us sharing these truths. All right, guys, shutting down.